So here we are in section 2 of I Am Mordred. We're going to be focusing on chapters 5 through 10. This will be the middle portion of your I Am Mordred response guide. So at this point, you should have completed section 1. And as we work through section 2, we'll then obviously move on to item number 3. Now, in this piece of our novel, we are introduced to some additional characters that will help to drive the plot of our story. In this case here, in the beginning of our plot questions, we have Peleus and Nineveh. And in this case here, Peleus leaves on a quest to find the Holy Grail. And we'll see later in the story whether or not he is successful. So Nineveh spends a lot of time with Mordred, and Mordred learns a lot from her as a character. Now, as we continue on here, Gawain and Garrett make an appearance again, and there is a change in the way that these half-brothers treat Mordred. So you're going to explain how these two half-brothers treat Mordred, and then you're also going to find a piece of textual evidence. I would recommend looking on page 45 in your books, because that will be a great location to start to find your textual evidence. Now, Mordred also meets King Arthur, and there is a specific way that he acts when they meet again. So you'll document that in this particular section. And then finally, Mordred himself is going to go on a quest to find an item that we'll discuss in class here. So you're going to describe the different obstacles that he encounters as he leaves to go on his quest. Now, when we continue on here, you have your vocabulary section. So again, you're writing down 5 vocabulary words from the 6 chapters that we will be reading, and then you will document the page number, the word, and then you will find an appropriate definition. Now, as we continue along here, we will then encounter the meaningful quotes component. So in this case here, again, you're looking in chapters 5 through 10, not 1 through 4, and you're going to write down 2 meaningful quotes. So again, you're going to find a quote and you're going to explain why that quote is relevant either to the plot of our story or just something that you thought was really interesting or compelling. Maybe it was the way a character stated their words, or just something that you thought was really interesting that you learned as you were reading. Now, as we continue along through here, the next section focuses on analyzing literature. Now, the setting of our story changes as we continue on through. When Mordred goes on his quest, obviously he needs to go from one location to another, and his movement changes our setting. So in chapter 8 here, we are at the seaside, and Mordred learns a couple things here when he goes to the seaside to visit his fisher father and fisher mother. Now, Mordred also visits Camelot, again the kingdom there, and then he also travels through the Forest Perilous. Then he eventually ends up at the Sierra Morgana, which, again, this location, the setting portion is filled out for you. It's an isolated but beautiful prison. And then you're going to explain what Mordred learns there. Then finally, you're going to preview what Avalon is like here in chapter 11. And then we are going to move on to the evaluating literature section. So in the evaluating literature section, there's a quote here from King Arthur, and you're explaining why Mordred misunderstands what King Arthur means. So again, we'll discuss this a little bit more in class, but you're describing what you think Arthur is trying to say to Mordred. Now, this next section here, you're going to reread the prologue of the story. Again, it's only 2 pages, and then you're going to answer question 2. So in this case here, Mordred personifies the sea as his enemy. And then as we continue along here, Mordred goes on his quest, but the first thing he does is go back to the sea. So you're going to describe what the sea symbolizes for Mordred based on the experiences that he had as a very young child in the prologue of our story. Now, as we move along here, the next section focuses on color symbolism again. That's one of the major themes or components of our story. And in this case here, you're going to focus on Chapter 7. So Chapter 7 will be centrally located around the color red. So that would be one example that you could use. However, there are many other examples of color symbolism, and your job is to go through Chapter 7 to find them. If for whatever reason you don't find 5 items in Chapter 7, you can always look through the other remaining chapters as well to find examples of color symbolism. So there you have section 2 of I Am Mordred. Again, you'll have paper copies of your response guides to complete in class, and then you'll always have access to digital copies online as well.